So we are really excited about the two presentations that we have planned for today. First up is going to be Samantha Deutch, who is the Assistant Director for the Center at the Center for the History of Collecting with the Frick Collection, the Frick Art Reference Library, co-presenting with Michelle Wilson, who is Digital Publishing Librarian at Columbia University. And they're going to be presenting on the Digital Art History Directory. This is an initiative of the Art Library Society of North America that seeks to define, promote, and build community around the discipline of digital art history. Samantha and Michelle are going to share the history of the project and the development of the online directory, and they're going to tell us more about how museum publishers can participate in the project. And then our second presentation is going to be from Caitlin Sweeney, who is Director of Digital Publications at the Wildenstein Plattner Institute. Caitlin will discuss the Institute's inaugural digital publication, the Tom Wesselmann Digital Corpus, the forthcoming digital Catalogue Raisonnés of Gauguin's Tahitian paintings, and the Institute's work to turn the Catalogue Raisonné into a dynamic and accessible online tool. We're going to start with Samantha and Michelle on the Digital Art History Directory. Then we're going to turn to Caitlin, and we will plan for a joint Q&A session after both presentations are done. So while you're listening to the presentations, please feel free to share questions in the chat as you think of them, and we will take a look and moderate a Q&A afterwards. So with that, I am happy to turn it over to Michelle and Samantha.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having us today so we could get the word out about our directory, which is still very much in progress. I'm going to start this with the who, what, where, and why, and probably not really in that order. So I'll start with the why. The genesis for the Digital Art History Directory was in a response to a need expressed by the community itself. More specifically, from a symposium sponsored by the Getty and Samuel H. Kress Foundation's Art History in Digital Dimensions, which was a 3-day event organized by the Department of Art History and Archaeology at the Maryland Institute for Technology and Humanities, and it was held at that same institution. The concept for this type of directory had been tossed around within the community ever since Diane Zorich's 2012 report and the Washington, D.C. Symposium and Workshop, American Art History and the Digital Scholarship, New Avenues for Exploration, which was funded by the Terra Foundation for American Art. Apologies for my phone. At the 2016 Digital Dimensions Symposium, several participants advocated for the production of an online directory and digital art history projects that would provide ease of discoverability and access to those projects. The directory might also in the future provide supplemental information for users such as DAW projects and tools, educational materials, and software tutorials, thus connecting art historians with tools and techniques most appropriate to their research questions. Furthermore, the Art History Directory would be able to address challenges regarding diversity. The range of institutions represented in ARLIS NA would ensure the full representation of projects from a variety of sources, private and public. Thus, the initiative would advance both the visibility of digital art history projects as well as partnership between art historians and librarians. Pursuant to this suggestion, several members of ARLIS NA, including specialists in the digital humanities, web archiving, cataloging, and systems librarianship, met at the Society's 45th annual conference in 2017 to discuss the implementation of this directory. And this was after this February 2017 paper, which was presented at CAA by myself and Ellen Prokop about the Digital Dimensions Symposium. Okay, so we have gone over, and we had decided, so we've gone over the why, and at this we had already decided, so we're looking at partners is also another thing, the who. So we wrote a proposal to the Samuel Kress Foundation with letters of support from Paul Jascott of Duke's Wired Lab and Allison Langmead from Pittsburgh. and we will be calling on them again for populating the directory, a venture which was derailed this past spring by COVID-19. I should point out that 80% of the funding for this project went into the development of the website, and this will hopefully serve as a model for our other partners in the Humanities Common, MLA, for partners who are looking to create other types of directories that could follow this, model on the Humanities Commons platform. So what is digital art history? And we don't have time to discuss that in its entirety today. So I'm just going to brush over it, but I would like to point out this article, Ben Zweig's article, Forgotten Genealogies, Brief Reflections on the History of Digital Art History. And this was in the International Journal of Art History. I saw you, Harold, hi. Does a fine job of defining the field. And other articles in the same volume tease out competing definitions and other arguments. So I urge you to look at that for more information. Also in Ben's article, he discusses the difference between art historians who work digitally and those who work as digital art history. And I'm going to show you some examples. So art historians have been working digitally for some time. You can see this Montius database, which was designed by Professor John Michael Montius. And this was looking at Dutch 16th and 17th century art collections. And so you're working with databases, you're working digitally. Also, art historians work with digital images. You do comparative analysis to glean sort of differences or insights into workshop practices. Art historians create timelines also to see kind of differentiations between that and other things, or they may create geocharts. So this here is just placing, this is one person's collection and where it's been dispersed across the world. You might be familiar with the London Art Gallery projects, which then takes into consideration GIS, and you're looking for relationships possibly between artists, the collectors, and the marketplace itself. You might want to do computational analysis. And so you're looking about how much people or one person or different entities spent in a specific sale and different visualizations. Both of these visualizations are looking at one specific sale of Mary Morgan's collection in 1886 using Tableau. Or you might be looking for relationships. And so this is the Getty. Okay. This is one that takes computational analysis and GIS together. And their different initiatives. Or you might see hybrid databases, which hold information. This is looking at Yale's Photogrammer, and it has photographs from the United States Farm Security Administration Office of War Information from 1935 to 1945, and hybrid because it visualizes the information in their directory, in their database, and you can also create user visualizations based on your search terminology. And you can also show visualizations again, so you're looking at one artist's collection, where they might have worked, and so I call that a hybrid database. And then we have the 19th century art worldwide. So we're looking at publications, different online publications. And these are not publications that are sold or reproduced as PDFs, but are interactive more. So how can museums benefit from the Digital Art History Directory? So I say, put your collection data, make it available in GitHub, entering information for your digital publications in the directory so that you get the same highlights as other digital art history projects. And also it possibly might help you gain an overview of the field or have inspiration for future projects and publications. So that's all I have. I'm going to turn it over to Michelle, which is going to talk more about, again, about the what and how.
Hi, I'm Michelle Wilson. I'm going to go ahead and share a couple of slides. This one, not particularly illustrative, but I joined the DHD project in the winter of 2018. This was at a point where the overall project had been envisioned, and I was asked to help develop our functional requirements for the website and manage the development process, as well as design a structure for our data and create an editorial workflow for ingesting, reviewing and publishing project records and metadata. So when Samantha and I sat down for the first time and began to design an interface for the project, we wanted immediately to make it as simple as possible, but having something that was highly searchable and would allow people to manipulate and play with the data we were collecting was very important to us. And we also wanted the site to welcome collaboration. And from the start, we considered how we could embed the process of submitting data and participating in the directory into the software and the interface that readers were encountering. We wanted this to be a website that was for students and emerging practitioners, as well as project producers and publishing institutions, as well as scholars of the digital humanities and digital art history. So I'm going to go ahead and talk a little bit about that development process because it was tricky with all of those different user journeys in mind. So one of my positions, or one of my job responsibilities in my position at Columbia is to evaluate and consider different web platforms and digital publishing technologies. And we always have those typical restrictions of a library and given the number of projects that we have to support in our community to leverage open source technologies and think about scope and reproducibility and future use of any technology that we're developing. So at the start of 2018, ARLIS had decided to migrate its website and online publications to Humanities Commons, which is an online interdisciplinary community built on WordPress and managed by the MLA. And so this seemed like a good opportunity to leverage some of that open source technology and piggyback on that project that ARLIS had already begun of integrating itself into the Humanities Commons infrastructure. I'm sure many of you, or maybe everyone, is familiar with WordPress, which is an open source software that was originally designed for blogging, but is utilized for anything from podcasting to e-commerce. So it's very flexible and customizable and free. And it's also a very commonly used software, which meant that we could expect to have a swift learning curve from future editors and people who were participating in the project. But we weren't able to find an existing plugin or theme that would support complex buildable searching with the interface that we wanted to create that would host different kinds of information for the community, as well as this searchable database of projects. Because of the advanced search feature we were looking for, we evaluated a few different collection management and digital exhibition tools like Omeka, but we weren't able to find anything. And so we went and spoke with the MLA as project partners and went to collaborate with them about what options we could create that would maybe benefit the existing community that was already participating in Humanities Commons. So we are very grateful to Eric Knapp and Ann Donlin, who we worked with at the MLA. And they were generous with their time and shared some possibilities they had heard of or were interested in developing, but were not yet able to provide through Humanities Commons library. One of these was Tainacan, which is a collection management and online collections publishing tool that was developed in Brazil for use in museums in that country. One of the things that immediately drew us to Tainacan was the out-of-the-box navigation pane and breadbox searching tools that were part of the collection or out of the search interface. And these would provide us with quantified results and the flexibility to change one or more elements in a search and to view the results in real time on there. The other thing that appealed to us about Tainacan was that by developing it, it would be interoperable with the Humanities Commons multi-site environment, which meant that we would be able to open up the technology and the theme to anyone else who wanted to create a website on Humanities Commons and build their own kind of collection or searchable tool like this. So this community-focused open source development was a key selling point in our grant application to the Crest Foundation. In November of 2019, we submitted a successful application to the Crest's Digital Art History Grant Program, and we were able to hire our developer shortly before the end of that year. Then in 2020, our developer got COVID. He recovered, but with the pandemic, our development phase stretched out over the course of 2020. And so at this time, we've stood up a successful iteration of the website on a test server, and we're working with the MLA to launch the site hopefully within the next week or two. But in lieu of that, I am able to share with you some screenshots of our website and to give you a better idea of what the database will look like in its final form. So these are some of the project wireframes that I drew up during the requirements gathering phase and when we were trying to explain our project to the Crest Foundation to hire our developer. And this is what our website looks like with our trial data there. So we were able to get quite a lot of what we were looking for in our initial design. The Digital Art History Directory is at its heart a project database. And so each record contains information about the originating institution, the names of contributors, and any funders or sponsors. We include a short abstract or project description, as well as up to 10 images representing the project. Our projects are described by keywords in 3 categories: project type, art history, and software and technologies. We also note the lifetime dates of the project by decade, when the project began, and if it's still we consider alive, or if it's been retired or is in archival form. With these characteristics, we hope that it will be possible for people, especially those who are interested in building their own projects, to find examples of digital art history addressing similar topics within art history, showing examples of what a particular software like Scalar or Omeka or Mapbox might be able to accomplish, and where there are current gaps in the landscape of digital art history in terms of one or more of those different facets. For those who are interested in researching digital art history as an emergent subdiscipline in the digital humanities, we also think the ability to chart the use of certain technologies and computational methodologies over time and to see when projects started and the resources that backed them will be incredibly valuable. And for both groups of people, the ability to see which projects died and how they were preserved or not in some form will be really useful for understanding what leads to project success. At the moment and for the next year, these search keywords that I've alluded to and that make up these facets that are part of the buildable search will be generated by the project owners and our institutional partners who are submitting records to the database. While we do provide instructions to those who are submitting to the database to check this search pane and see if they can find terms that are part of the extant taxonomy to describe their projects, we have not yet generated a full controlled vocabulary of the Digital Art History Directory, and that serves 2 purposes. The first is that we won't have empty fields that are cluttering the search feature to sort of convolute or turn up null search results in the database as we're growing. And secondly, there is currently no taxonomy for digital art history. And one of the aims of this project is to and it's something of personal interest to me as a researcher and digital scholarship librarian, is to see what folksonomy is created through crowdsourcing our data. At the 6 and 12-month milestones after our launch, we intend to take snapshots of what vocabulary has emerged and see what, if anything, we learn from teasing out and organizing the terms that we collect. And we imagine that that taxonomy will also continue to grow and evolve in tandem with digital art history and its future iterations. So this leads me to talking about how you, as people who are working to build digital publications and digital art history projects, can get involved in the Digital Art History Directory. We hope that you'll all consider sharing projects with the Digital Art History Directory, either through the individual self-deposit form, and this will be embedded directly onto our website, or through a bulk submissions form for which we've provided information and you can fill out. We have a CSV template to deal with that. We really hope to populate our site and generate a well-rounded vocabulary with project records that are described by the people who have created them. And so we really want to get this out into the community to get project creators to share and describe their own projects for us. And we also want to make sure that we're including a broad cross-section of what might be defined as digital art history. We all know that the term publication can wear a lot of different hats. I work as a publishing librarian and spend at least 40% of my time teaching podcasting. And so we don't define digital art history as necessarily computational or experimental or based in particular modes of presentation or class of technology. So many of the things that you are producing would be a great fit for our directory. So one of the exciting aspects of this project is to see how digital art history and its practitioners see and define themselves. And we also hope that they will enjoy getting to know each other and to use the platform for sharing and community building. As Samantha mentioned, in addition to the project records, we've also commissioned and will continue to build a set of digital art history resources, including essays like things on web archiving, discoverability, cataloging for digital art history projects, and ongoing resource lists of open data collections and digitized collections of artworks. And all of those things are very open and welcome submissions if there are resources at your institutions that you would like to be seen and used more by the digital art history community.
Samantha and Michelle, thank you so much for that. As I said, we're going to be doing a combined Q&A afterwards. So if questions are crossing your mind, by all means, please do share them in the chat. But now we will turn it over to Caitlin Sweeney.
Hi, thank you. I'm very excited to speak with this group. My name is Caitlin Sweeney. I'm the Director of Digital Publications for the Wildenstein Plattner Institute. And thank you, Michelle and Samantha. That was really exciting and fascinating. I wanted to share some background about the Wildenstein Plattner Institute and our legacy of publishing catalog raisonnés. During this presentation, I'll also show you the Tom Wesselmann Digital Corpus and explain a little bit about what informed its creation and design. So I feel like this is a little bit of a case study of a digital project that might end up on the Digital Art History Lab. So the WPI, it was founded in 2016 at the behest of Guy Wildenstein and Hasso Plattner. Wildenstein, as many of you may know, it's a multi-generational family of art dealers. The Wildenstein Gallery is still active, and for many decades, they also supported the research of the Wildenstein Institute, and this entity published dozens of print catalog raisonnés on artists such as Monet, Pissarro, Gauguin, and Jasper Johns. That was how I became involved in this type of research, was my time working on the Jasper Johns catalog raisonné of painting and sculpture. Hasso Plattner is a German tech industrialist and founder of SAP. And through the Hasso Plattner Foundation, he is also involved in a tremendous amount of philanthropy. He is also a collector of Impressionist paintings. And in this role, he became interested in how authority was created and how that authority was communicated in the art world. I think these are questions lots of us may have. How could a painting go from being worth $20 million to nothing? One answer is the data that you would find in a catalog raisonné, whether a work is included or not, the compilation of provenance, exhibition history, bibliography, archival records. This is the material that academics and the market use to determine whether a work of art can be considered genuine. And so Plattner and Wildenstein met, and they created the WPI in an effort to explore how this historical data, which the Wildenstein Institute had plenty of, how it might be facilitated using new technology to make the creation of this knowledge more transparent. So a brief aside also, a catalog raisonné, for those who don't know, is the record of the entire of a single artist. These are the venerated bricks and mortar of art history, and they are encyclopedic undertakings. Some take decades to complete. And I bring this up because in the past, the art market would have to wait to see if the artwork they were interested in selling was in the print publication. And if you're an art dealer, this is a huge hindrance to your business. So the Wildenstein Institute started issuing what they called attestation letters, essentially written confirmation that a work of art had been vetted, in this case by the Wildenstein Institute's committee, and that the letter, it promises that the work of art will be included in the forthcoming catalog raisonné. So human nature being what it is, these attestation letters acquired a value of their own. A painting by Monet, for example, can't be sold without this print attestation letter, and you must forgive the crying baby in the background. I think this is really interesting because in a way, these attestation letters can almost be perceived as more up-to-date than the print catalog raisonné itself. So here we are, the Wildenstein Plattner Institute. It's the 21st century, and we find ourselves developing this tech platform that aims to turn catalog raisonné research from a monumental book to an up-to-date tool. And it seems to us that the first thing that should go is this attestation letter. So this brings us to the Tom Wesselmann Digital Corpus, and I'm going to share my screen now. Excuse me. Okay. So, sorry, I just want to make sure I can navigate here. All right. So our first collaboration is with the estate of Tom Wesselmann. And we have only, excuse me, I lost my place. Yeah, we wanted this digital publication to be the most up-to-date resource, the singular source for information on the artist. However, we have only just started research on Wesselmann. We're far away from publishing a catalog raisonné in the traditional sense. So we've developed this corpus with the goal to share the status of our catalog raisonné research in real time. And a quick aside, we were able to do this with the Wesselmann artwork because he kept an exceptionally thorough, detailed record of the artworks he had created during his lifetime. So we are working with a very strong archival foundation, essentially an index of all of his works. And on a personal note, I should add that this would not be possible without the staff of the Wesselmann estate, the family, and Jeffrey Sturgis, the director of exhibitions, who is our primary point person there. They've been incredibly generous with their time and their expertise, but also they've been very open-minded and excited about this new approach. It's testament to their support that we are able to maintain the seriousness of catalog raisonné research, while also experimenting with how to do this type of work in a fast-paced digital environment. So the corpus, you can access it through our website up here through the Wesselmann portal. And I don't know why it's not working, but I'll just go back to here. You enter, and what you're basically seeing are all of what the artist called unique major works and oil studies. We do plan to include prints and drawings in the future. And the estate had images of practically all of the works. And they are presented here in black and white, unless the work has gone through the WPI's submission process, and more on that in a moment. When you click on a black and white image, you can see the image, and you get the title and you get the date, but you don't get much else about the painting. We withhold the rest of the cataloging. And then you're also directed to submit the work if you happen to own it yourself. And that would take you to our website to fill out a form. If you click on a color image, you can see that there is much more data. That means that the work has been vetted by the WPI's Wesselmann Committee. And when we first launched the corpus in June of 2020, the whole project was only about a year old. So in this first round of publishing, most of what we are sharing was cataloging that came from the estate that we were able to fact check. We didn't want to publish anything that we couldn't fact check ourselves. And so because of COVID, there's a little bit of a backlog of exhibition and provenance research, but we do plan to update our corpus on a quarterly basis. Let's see. And then just to show you some more, so you can see there's the examination status, whether we've examined it, medium, dimensions. In the cases where we haven't examined the work in person ourselves, we use the museum or the owner's information. Provenance, exhibitions, publications. So very standard information for a catalog raisonné. Let me see. the search overview, I'm sure many of you can relate to this conundrum that a website looks so simple and straightforward, and yet behind the scenes there was so much thought and research put into it. It's very complicated. So what we have here are some fairly straightforward searching capabilities, but it's the result of structuring a lot of the data that we received from the Wesselmann estate. Title and medium description for the time being, we're using free text to search this, but we're also implementing controlled vocabularies for other projects we're working on. Provenance, I think, is the best example of how our data is structured. We rely on the Getty ULON, the Union List of Artist Names. So like, you can see here, when you go to this work, in the provenance, David Geffen comes up. Likewise, LA Mocha would be an agent that we have consolidated and identified using these standard vocabularies. And we also built our provenances in consultation with the semantic model established by the Carnegie Museum of Art's Provenance Initiative, Art Tracks. And our goal is that our agents, David Geffen, LA Mocha, the transaction types, and also the dates will be legible on tech platforms other than our own. And I think that when I see Michelle and Samantha present on these other projects, these are the environments we're hoping that our data can be used in someday, geolocations and market salability projects. So we're organizing, structuring our data with those sorts of applications in mind for the future. Let me see. I do want to say something about the submission request at the, like if you go back to the main page where you're encouraged to submit if you own a work. This really speaks to the market interface of this project. We want this repository to be the source to consult if you want to know about a work by Wesselmann, but also if you are an auction house or a dealer and you want to confirm that the work is in the artist's archives, this is how you would learn whether that's the case. You could ideally match a work you own to a black and white image and see that it needs to be vetted by the committee, or you can see that it's already been through that process. I should also say we are prioritizing works based on what we are focusing our research on. So right now, that's the Great American Nudes. If you have a painting that falls into that category, we are waiving the fee for submitting that work. And this is to encourage owners of Great American Nude paintings to submit and to share what they know about the work and to hopefully in a post-COVID world, let us examine it in person. So I like, well, I'll just say one more thing. One thing you don't see is a timestamp. And I first of all want to say that you will, but it alludes to this ongoing conversation that we have with our tech team about whether this is a database or a publication. We think of it as a publication. And when I say we, I mean the researchers in New York and France. We expect to have the equivalent of a manuscript that we can edit. We want a publish button that we can press and make it clear that we've updated our research. And that is, it turns out, a very complicated process for our tech team, and it didn't initially conform to their expectations. So there's been a real back and forth about, well, what is this? Is it a publication? Is it a database? And what's required to put information out there in terms of an editorial process. In the same vein, we're asking, when are we going to switch from a digital corpus to a digital catalog raisonné? What's the difference? We're still trying to figure that out. We have plans to augment our cataloging, certainly. For example, we have digitized the Tom Wesselmann archives. And I just want to show a few examples. These are really great. He kept kind of a Polaroid inventory of his works. So you can see here the Great American New #1 and all of the notes he kept on the back. So he has this for many of his works. We have installation shots that we plan to be tying to exhibition histories. So that could certainly create like a more robust digital publication. Additionally, we have correspondence and other exhibition studio installation shots. I also want to show you I'm not going to talk about the Gauguin project, but I want to allude to future functionality. For N- fans out there, this is placeholder text. It's definitely going to be different when it goes live, but you can see, once it loads, this is, yeah. All right, you can see that we have the ability to link to scanned material. So this is an exhibition catalog the work is cited in, and we have the relevant pages available for reader to look at. So that sort of interoperability will be available for the Wesselmann corpus eventually. This is sort of the template for essays that we plan to have for Gauguin. So certainly, text would make that distinction. But I also think that some of the innovations that we're really excited about have to do with using the data in new ways, seeing it in more robust contexts. So for example, the exhibition histories, there aren't many overlaps between Gauguin and Wesselmann at this moment, but there are for Jasper Johns. For Jasper Johns, we're in a very much print mindset at the moment. The 5-volume set is available from Yale University Press. But someday, whether it's artists on our own platform or us contributing our data to work with a wider variety of artists on some future digital endeavor, I think the advances we can look forward to in scholarship with regard to Catalogue Raisonnés will work in tandem with advances in the digital humanities. So to wrap up, a Catalogue Raisonné is a reasoned catalog, and it is different. There is a lot to learn from the comprehensive look at the whole body of work when everything is said and done. But we are a relatively new organization, and we are anticipating a new mode of interaction with Catalogue Raisonnés. One time I was at a gallery opening, and I ran into a scholar who has worked on several of these projects, and they mentioned, or I mentioned how we were building this tech platform, and I described it as a tool, and they were like, "Oh, huh! I always thought of them as monuments," and that really speaks to this tense moment we're in for this genre. We're not really in the business of publishing monuments at the moment. We're trying to make a fresh, decisive approach, or take a fresh, decisive approach to what a digital catalog raisonné can be. If you would like to hear more about this project, in an effort to make our research transparent, my colleague, Haffa Frobes-Cross, who is the project manager of the Digital Corpus, he'll be speaking at CAA. So please do attend his talk. And he and our archivist, Samantha wrote, unfortunately, you can't see it on this website right now. Here it is. But they speak about all of the digital archives we have that are informing our decisions to include works in Catalogue Raisonnés or not in this video. And please join our mailing list or our Instagram at WPI_art. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Caitlin. And thank you again, Michelle and Samantha. That two great presentations from both of you and from both projects that I think are nice to be seeing in this format. And I hope that everybody who's been in the audience and listening is getting as much out of it as I am. There were a couple questions that I wanted to surface that came out of the chat. And then I encourage everybody, all the attendees here to jump in with other questions as well as they come up. But the first one, I wonder for Michelle and Samantha, if you could kind of clarify a little bit about the use of the digital art history directory. Is it going to be open? It seems like it's going to be open for everybody to submit to. Is that correct?
Yeah, we've
Yes.
set it up so that when the website is live, although I put in the chat the links to the bulk submission instructions, which contains a link for the CSV file, as well as the form that will be embedded on the website. We anticipate there will be a lot of bulk uploads at the start where people send stuff with us, but then we hope people will continue to add projects as they are developed and go live. There is an editorial workflow that happens between when you submit your project. It does not appear immediately on the website. Partly that's because there are things like in the bulk submission form and elsewhere, there are instructions about preparing image captions and alt text and things like that. So because we didn't want this to be an enormous development project, the database itself is decoupled from the WordPress site. So there's an editorial process that goes on before there. Part of that process is determining whether or not things are within scope. We're trying as much as we can to be broad-minded about what belongs in the directory, but we'll get in touch with you if there's anything that doesn't quite meet stuff or if there are elements missing. But the idea is that you don't have to like know us or get in touch with us first to submit items to the directory.
Nice. And that answers actually another question that someone had raised about wondering how you were going to deal with duplicate records and things like that. So it sounds like there's a definite editorial phase in the uploading and everything.
Yeah, and that should help to do sort of like minor data inconsistencies. Like if someone puts like 19th century art and then 19th century art with a hyphen in it or something like that, we'll hopefully catch little things like that. So there should be sort of a filter on the submissions.
And that kind of, I just expand on that a little bit more. Then I guess, what is your plan for the sort of long-term maintenance and sort of an upkeep of that? I mean, that could potentially be a really big job to do all that editorial work and then to continue it on for a long time. Do you have what's your all sort of timeline and horizon for the work on the directory?
It's actually becoming an ARLIS NA publication, and we'll have an editor for that ongoing. So
great. Hopefully
that takes care of this. Michelle will be our first editor.
Well, now I have to see, I'm like very curious how it will all pan out. I can't leave yet. I have to see it through for a period of years to see how it grows. But ARLIS has art documentation and ARLIS NA reviews. And so it's part of our organizational structure that we have this publications arm. So hopefully we'll be able to sort of grow and manage the amount of work depending on, how popular it becomes or how large the workload is.
I was also wondering for both of you, Caitlin as well, if you could talk about how your projects, if they shifted at all over the past year due to COVID and due to sort of the quarantining, whether your ideas about what was important or what could or couldn't be in the various databases and projects, if you had any sort of conceptual shifts other than the sort of the normal shift of like the panic of like, how do we work this way, and like sort of practical shifts, but if there were sort of more conceptual things on either of your projects.
If you don't mind, I think we felt very fortunate because we'd started this scanning initiative several years before COVID. So the fact that we were able to work with digitized material, we were just thinking that this is the wave of the future, and this was very convenient. But aside from that, I think a lot of the process of engaging with the works of art for these committee meetings involves seeing them in person. So involve examinations, and it's that in-person element that you can see in actually the structure of our page that we see whether something's been examined. And we're obviously not examining works, but it was really important to us to continue including works. So we had to kind of become a little bit less strict. And I think this actually is smart. A work that's in the Ludwig collection in Germany, for instance, it's not questionable. We know that work belongs in the Tom Wesselmann corpus. And so we changed our guidelines really where like we didn't have to examine something to include it. But yeah, that the questions that are haunting the art market in general right now, how do you sell works when you can't see something in person? Those affect us as well.
Thank you, Michelle and Samantha. What about you? Were there ways you've shifted the directory or the way you've implemented it based on sort of the new world we're living in?
Well, we were going to have a in-person datathon at Columbia University, but there was a virtual component that was going to hook up with the Duke Wired labs and perhaps some other labs, but that was derailed with the semester ending and everybody going home. And so we do need to rethink just a virtual datathon going forward. But right now we're kind of stuck with getting this published on the Humanities Commons first.
So much of this hinges on building up a community of people who will submit projects and interact with the directory, because we were looking to collect some data about projects, and we can do some of that on our own, but we really want people to describe their own projects because that's really important for us in terms of the vocabulary development. So this has been a wonderful opportunity to get to talk to some people who might be interested in contributing. And one of our plans originally had been to go and talk at CAA and ARLIS and our normal conferences. So we've had to think about different ways to connect with the community and find, digital spaces where we can do some of that, like community building, that is really important to our project.
Great, thank you. There's another sort of comment in the question in the chat that I just want to read. It's from Jessica. She says, "It strikes me that so much of this work that museums are already doing and have been doing for decades since collection databases became computerized. Is there any talk in the field about a universal museum catalog like there is for libraries?" And so she was talking when this question came up when Caitlin was presenting and thinking about sort of how do we make a sort of more universal standard for how we're collecting or capturing this information about these artworks. I think it also applies to the digital art history directory in terms of like how are we sharing or how are you all thinking about how this data connects, the data that you're collecting so carefully, how or if it connects in any way outside of your own individual projects or their own sort of databases.
One of the things that we are offering, which I didn't talk about too much here, but I mentioned that the database is decoupled from the website, and we're utilizing Airtable as the place where we're storing our data. We thought about a few different formats, but one of the things about Airtable is that it's essentially like a spreadsheet structure. So it makes it very easy for us to export CSVs with all of the data about the projects. We wanted to make this a tool for people to study and learn about the discipline. And so we wanted to make the data downloadable so that people can use it in different ways. So having that aspect of it that's portable and people can request data exports from our Airtable database. That'll be part of like one of the things you can request via contact us form is for us to give you like a snapshot, whatever's in our database at that time.
Great. Nice. Caitlin,
Yeah,
what about you?
A great question. I think one of the issues that I didn't bring up in my presentation was that the database we're working from is proprietary. We are working in consultation with a tech team that was provided by the Hasso Plattner Foundation to build something that was customizable for us and or customized for our work. And at the moment, this platform, we are using it, but it belongs to the Hasso Plattner Foundation. And I think it remains to be seen how that project moves forward. But it speaks to this idea of, do we need another TMS? Like, is this about like creating different platforms? And I know that so much of the conversation that's going in the sort of open access community is about, if one program or one platform dies, as you put it, Michelle, will your data be lost or hijacked? Can it continue to move forward? And I think the best answer I can give is that that's why we're trying to use controlled vocabularies so that we can do things like export our data in CSV files and share them with other projects that other people are doing. But our Catalogue Raisonnés project is, I almost want to explain that like getting this far was revolutionary for Catalogue Raisonnés. It's a very shrouded in mystery genre. So, we're not open source yet. We are using this proprietary tool. And I think it'll take time to get to a place where we've vetted, let's say, all the works by Gauguin or by Wesselmann, and then feel comfortable sharing that information more broadly. I think part of the Catalogue Raisonnés project is trying to maintain a source of authority for a body of work, despite the desire to be transparent about where that authority is coming from. And so, yeah, I mean, I kind of went on a tangent, but I'm trying to say that our best solution was by trying to be consistent and also by structuring our data in a way that is machine readable, you know, that you don't have to have an editor knowing exactly what a colon or a semicolon meant in order to understand what the data means. And yeah, it's an imperfect answer.
Thanks. That's nice. I like that idea that that other brings, when you said shrouded, shrouded in mystery, the Catalogue Raisonnés, so that themselves were shrouded in mystery, brought up sort of another connection between these two projects that I thought was interesting, in that you're both, they're both about undoing some of that mystery and really trying to bring forward sort of, whether it's Catalogue Raisonnés or whether it's these digital art history projects, is trying to surface them so that, and make them more transparent, more accessible, more understandable, so that we as a field can move forward on that, whether that means finding new ways of making our own Catalogue Raisonnés, or understanding what else is going on in digital art history, and that kind of thing. So I think that was a really nice connection there. And I like the shrouded in mystery part of it. I think a lot of the work that we all feel is very obvious to us, especially, I know this happens in museum publishing, where, you know, and this probably happens in any sector, in any field, where your work that you do and you're embedded in feels so regular and normal, you forget that in many ways it's shrouded in mystery to everybody who's not a part of that field or part of that sector. And so as you have people coming in who are new or who are trying to learn it, they have a lot of questions that may seem basic, but are actually really fundamental. And so great to put it. That's it from me. I'm going to look to my Mupudig co-host. And do you all have any other questions you wanted to put forward, or anything else you wanted to say in our last couple of minutes here? Okay.
Okay, well.
Greg, wait, this is Katie, sorry. And because there's apparently slow internet across the East Coast, I've been informed by our IT department, so I'm off camera. But just one kind of last question for Caitlin, which I think she sort of alluded to, and that comes to this sort of idea of transparency or authority, which I thought it was so elegant in the interface, how you use sort of color and black and white to clearly signal, like, this is a work in process, and like what is, you know, what's done and what's not done. And was that something that there was a lot of pushback from? And kind of getting buy-in, you know, there's the corpus idea, and how, you know, maybe as people here are trying to think about breaking out of that all or nothing approach that we are very locked into oftentimes as publishers, what strategies, you know, or kind of arguments might be effective in that respect?
Oh, honestly, flexibility. I think I was very rigid about a work must have gone through the WPI submission process and be examined by the WPI committee in order, because I'm also not speaking about a legal undercurrent to all of this as well. Saying an artwork goes in or out of the Catalogue Raisonnés has consequences for the owner and for lots of different entities, the person who's making that decision. And so the Wesselmann corpus is really unique because, again, it was such a strong archival foundation. We're not really expecting any surprises. There's not going to be like a Wesselmann showing up in, you know, a Kansas grandma's attic, we don't think, unless it's already in the archive. I mean, a surprise Wesselmann. So when the estate felt strongly about including works in color that we hadn't examined, but that they felt sure about, I think a lot of the rigidity that I was approaching to rules had to bend. And I think that's hard with Catalogue Raisonnés in general, because they, you know, they they do rely on the rules. So yeah, I don't know if I have strategies to share. I know that we are not the only ones who do this. I think we initially got the idea from the Noguchi Museum. They do something similar with their collection, and it's sort of a hybrid collection catalog raisonné project, I think. And I think that might be an elegant solution. But also in terms of sharing things in process, I shared the wireframes from the Gauguin design because also our tech platform is in process. Not only did we want to, we did not want to wait 10 years to publish a book. We also didn't want to wait 10 years for a perfect tech platform. So we're constantly changing. And I think that is also anathema to traditional catalog raisonné people as well. So flexibility and a sense of humor, I would say.
All right.
Thank you.
That takes us to 1 o'clock. We want to thank Samantha, Michelle, and Caitlin so much for those thought-provoking presentations. Thank you so much to everyone who joined us as attendees. Our next call is going to be on Tuesday, March 23rd at noon. Please do make sure you sign up for our mailing list so you can get a reminder in advance. And please get in touch with us either by Slack or email to share ideas for future presenters and topics, whether those are self-nominations for yourself or otherwise. We really appreciate those suggestions. Again, we'll be posting the recording from today soon, and we will look forward to seeing you at our next call. And thank you, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.